Mary Collins looked at the clock on her classroom wall. It was 9 in the morning, and her third-grade students were sitting in their reading circle. The sun shone through the windows of Lincoln Elementary School in Pine Ridge, Montana. It was a perfect Tuesday morning in October. "Tommy, can you read the next page?" Mary asked the 8-year-old boy with brown hair and freckles. Tommy Hayes nodded and opened his book. Around him, 22 other children sat quietly on the colorful carpet. Lisa Wong played with her long black hair while she listened. Jake Martinez drew pictures on his paper. Amy Johnson smiled as she followed along in her own book. Mary loved teaching. She had been at Lincoln Elementary for 12 years. The small school only had 200 students, but they were good kids. The town of Pine Ridge was quiet and safe. Nothing bad ever happened here. In the main office, Principal Richard Stone was drinking his coffee and reading emails. He was a tall man with gray hair who had run the school for 20 years. The phone rang on his desk. "Lincoln Elementary, this is Principal Stone," he answered. "Sir, this is the emergency broadcast system. We have a situation. Unknown aircraft are entering Montana airspace. Please keep your students inside and away from windows." Richard dropped his coffee cup. It broke on the floor, sending hot liquid everywhere. He had never received a call like this before. "What kind of aircraft?" he asked. "We don't know, sir. They don't match any known military vehicles. Please follow lockdown procedures immediately." Richard hung up the phone and ran to the intercom system. His hands shook as he pressed the button. "Attention all teachers and staff. We are now in lockdown mode. This is not a drill. Keep all students in their classrooms. Lock your doors. Stay away from windows." In Mary's classroom, the children looked confused. They had practiced lockdown drills before, but this felt different. Mary's voice sounded scared when she spoke. "Everyone, we need to move to the corner of the room. Remember our safety rules. We need to be very quiet." The children moved quickly. Tommy helped Lisa stand up. Jake picked up the crayons he had dropped. Amy held the hand of her friend Bobby Lee, who looked scared. Outside, the sky began to change. Dark clouds appeared from nowhere. But these were not normal clouds. They moved too fast and had strange shapes. In the distance, people could see silver objects flying through the air. Paul Rogers, the gym teacher, was in the hallway when the announcement came. He was a big man who used to be in the army. He looked out the window and saw something that made his blood run cold. 3 silver ships were flying toward the school. They were shaped like triangles and made no sound. Paul had seen military aircraft before, but these were different. They moved in ways that seemed impossible. "Karen," he called to the librarian who was walking past. "Get the kids in the library and barricade the doors, now." Karen White looked at Paul's face and knew something was very wrong. She was a small woman with gray hair, but she moved fast. She ran to the library where 15 children were reading. "Children, we need to play a special game. Everyone needs to hide behind the bookshelves. Don't make any noise." The children could hear the fear in her voice. They did what she said without asking questions. In the school's basement, maintenance worker Joe Phillips was fixing a broken pipe. He was a quiet man who had worked at the school for 10 years. He heard the announcement over the intercom and felt confused. Joe climbed the stairs to look outside. Through a small window, he saw the silver ships landing in the school parking lot. Tall figures in strange armor stepped out. They carried weapons that glowed with blue light. Joe ran back to the basement and called 911 on his cell phone. 911. "What's your emergency?" "This is Joe Phillips at Lincoln Elementary. We have armed intruders with advanced weapons. They're not human. I repeat, they are not human. The dispatcher was quiet for a moment. "Sir, can you repeat that? They look like giant insects. They're 7 feet tall with big bug eyes. They have weapons I've never seen before. They're walking toward the school." Outside, Commander Vextar led his team of 12 Zephyrian soldiers. They had been studying this human settlement for months. The research showed that humans were weak creatures who cared too much about their young. This made them easy to control. The Zephyrians looked like huge insects walking on 2 legs. Their skin was hard and shiny like armor. They had 4 arms and eyes that could see in all directions. Their weapons could cut through metal like paper. "Remember the plan," Vextar told his soldiers in their clicking language. "We take the small humans alive. The adult humans will surrender when they see their young in danger. This species is too emotional to fight properly." The aliens had studied human movies and television shows. They thought humans were soft and peaceful. They had seen farmers and teachers and shopkeepers. They did not understand what humans were really like when someone threatened their children. The first alien reached the school's front door. It raised its weapon and fired a blue beam. The steel door melted like ice cream. The aliens walked through. The smoking hole dot in the hallway. Security guard Dan Cooper heard the noise. He was an old man who had fought in Vietnam 40 years ago. He carried only a radio and a small stick, but he was not afraid. Dan pressed his radio button. "All units. We have a breach at the main entrance. These are not human attackers. I repeat, not human. They have advanced weapons." He hid behind a corner and watched the aliens move down the hallway. They were checking each classroom door. When they found a locked door, they melted it open with their weapons. The aliens moved like they were hunting. They worked as a team, covering each other and moving in formation. But Dan noticed something important. They moved slowly and carefully. They were not used to fighting in small spaces. In Mary's classroom, the children could hear strange sounds in the hallway. The sounds were getting closer. Mary put her finger to her lips to tell the children to stay quiet. The classroom door exploded inward. Blue light filled the room, and hot metal fell to the floor. A tall alien figure stepped through the smoking doorway. The children screamed. Some tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. The alien's 4 arms moved quickly, and it made clicking sounds. "Do not move, small humans," the alien said in perfect English. "You will not be harmed if you obey." Mary stepped in front of her students. She was a small woman, but she stood tall. "You can't have them. Leave these children alone." The alien looked at her with its huge compound eyes. "You cannot stop us, human female. We have weapons you cannot imagine. Your young will come with us." More aliens entered the classroom. They carried devices that looked like nets made of light. The children huddled together in the corner, holding each other's hands. But Mary Collins did not step aside. She spread her arms wide to protect her students. "You'll have to go through me first." The alien commander tilted its head. These humans were stranger than the research had indicated. Why would the adult risk death for young that were not even her own offspring? Around the school, the same scene played out in every classroom. Teachers and staff members stood between the aliens and the children. They had no weapons and no chance of winning, but they did not surrender. The aliens gathered all the children. In the cafeteria, 200 scared boys and girls sat on the floor while the insect-like creatures stood guard. The aliens had taken the school, but they were confused by what they had seen. Commander Vextar looked at the frightened children and felt confident. Soon, the human governments would surrender to save these young ones. The Zephyrians would win, without a real fight. He had no idea that he had just made the worst mistake in his species' history. The news spread across the world faster than wildfire. Within 1 hour of the attack, Every television station on Earth showed the same terrible images. Security cameras from Lincoln Elementary had captured everything before the aliens destroyed them. People around the world watched in horror as giant insect-like creatures herded terrified children into the school cafeteria. The footage showed 8-year-old Tommy Hayes crying for his mother. It showed Lisa Wong holding her friend's hand while alien soldiers stood over them with glowing weapons. In Washington, D.C., President Michelle Carter sat in the Situation Room with her advisors. She was a strong woman who had led the country through many crises, but nothing had prepared her for this. "How many children?" she asked. 200, Madam President," answered General Frank Mitchell, "all between ages 5 and 11. The president's hands shook as she watched the footage again. On the screen, little Amy Johnson was comforting a crying boy half her age. The sight made Michelle think of her own grandchildren. "What do the aliens want?" she asked. "They've sent a message to every government on Earth," said Secretary of State Robert Hayes. "They want complete surrender of all human military forces within 24 hours. If we refuse, they say they'll take the children to their home planet." The president stood up and walked to the window. Outside, she could see protesters gathering. But these were not ordinary protesters. These were parents, grandparents, and ordinary citizens demanding action. "Get me the Joint Chiefs," she ordered, "and contact every world leader. We need to talk." Now, in Montana, the local police had surrounded the school, but they felt helpless. Sheriff Bill Adams had been a cop for 30 years, but his pistol was useless against alien technology. He stood behind his police car and watched the silver ships parked in the schoolyard. "Any word from the FBI?" he asked his deputy. "They're on the way, but they don't know what to do either," Deputy Sarah Martinez replied. "The aliens' ships have some kind of shield. Our bullets just bounce off." Sheriff Adams received a call on his radio. It was from the school's basement. "This is Joe Phillips. I'm still inside the building. I can see the aliens guarding the kids in the cafeteria." "Joe, you need to get out of there," the sheriff said. "No, sir. I'm not leaving these kids. Dan Cooper is with me. We're going to find a way to help." Around the world, the reaction was unlike anything in human history. In New York, construction. Worker Mike Johnson left his job and drove straight to the military recruitment center. His daughter was safe at home, but he couldn't stop thinking about the children in Montana. "I want to volunteer," he told the recruiter. "For what?" asked Sergeant Lisa Brown. "To fight those things. To get those kids back." The recruitment center was packed. Men and women of all ages waited in line. Some were crying. Others looked angry. All of them wanted to help Dot in London. Similar scenes played out. Former soldier Peter Shaw had been retired for 10 years, but he put on his old uniform and reported to his old base. "I know I'm too old," he told his former commander, "but I have grandchildren. I can't just sit and watch." The commander looked at the crowd of volunteers outside. "You're not too old, Peter. We need everyone." In Moscow, Admiral Dmitry Volkov was meeting with his staff. Russia and America had been enemies for decades, but not today. "Prepare the fleet," he ordered. "We're going to help the Americans." "Sir, we have no orders from the government." His aide said. "Some things are more important than politics," Volkov replied. "Those are children up there." Back in Montana, the aliens were growing confused. They had expected the humans to surrender quickly. Instead, their communication systems were flooded with angry messages from around the world. In the mothership. Orbiting Earth, Admiral Zekmov studied the human responses. His species had conquered 12 other worlds, but they had never seen anything like this. "They're not surrendering," reported Captain Rixville. "Instead, they're gathering their warriors. Every human military base is now active. That makes no sense, Sekhmet said. We have their young. They should be begging for mercy. The aliens had studied human farming in cities. They had watched human entertainment and business. But they had not studied human history. They did not understand what humans were capable of when their children were threatened. On Earth, something ancient was waking up. In small towns and big cities, people were remembering what it meant to be human. They were remembering that they were part of something bigger than themselves. In Chicago, Nurse Helen Foster had worked a double shift at the hospital. She was tired and wanted to go home to her family. But when she saw the news, she drove to the nearest military base instead. I want to help, she told the guards. Ma'am, you should go home to your family, the guard said. Those children are my family too, Helen replied. We're all human. The guard looked at her face and saw something that made him step aside. Helen wasn't just a nurse anymore. She was a warrior. In the school cafeteria, the children were trying to be brave. Tommy Hayes had stopped crying and was helping the younger kids. Lisa Wong was teaching them a quiet game to keep their minds busy. Amy Johnson was telling stories to make the scared ones laugh. The alien guards watched with confusion. These young humans were not acting like prisoners. They were taking care of each other instead of giving up hope. Commander Vex Tar walked among the children, studying them. His species' young were helpless for years after hatching. They needed constant protection and could not survive alone. But these human children were different. Why are you not afraid? He asked Amy Johnson. The 8-year-old girl looked up at the 7-foot alien with bug eyes and weapons. Because the grown-ups will come for us, she said simply. Your grown-ups cannot defeat us, Vextar replied. We have superior technology. Amy shook her head. You don't understand. They're not just grown-ups. They're our families. And families don't give up. The alien commander felt something cold in his stomach. Something was wrong with this conquest. The human response was not following the pattern they had seen on other worlds. Outside the school, more vehicles were arriving every hour. Police cars, fire trucks, and civilian cars filled the parking lots of nearby businesses. News trucks came from every major network. But most importantly, parents were coming. Janet Hayes drove 8 hours from Denver when she heard the news. Her own children were grown up, but she had been a teacher for 20 years. She knew what it felt like to love other people's children. I just want to help, she told the police officer at the roadblock. Ma'am, this is a dangerous area, he said. Officer, I taught 3rd grade for 20 years. Those kids in there are scared and need adults who care about them. I'm not leaving. The officer looked at the hundreds of other adults behind her. Teachers, parents, grandparents, and strangers who had driven from other states. All of them had the same look in their eyes. By evening, the small town of Pine Ridge had become the center of the world's attention. Military forces from every nation were heading toward Montana. The president had declared a state of emergency, but more importantly, she had declared something else. My fellow Americans, she said in a televised address, and to all people around the world, today, aliens attacked our children. They believe this makes us weak. They believe we will surrender to save our young. They are wrong. The president's voice grew stronger as she continued. We are not weak because we love our children. We are strong because we love our children. And we will show these invaders what happens when someone threatens a human child. Around the world, people watched and nodded. In Japan, Prime Minister Tanaka was mobilizing his forces. In Germany, Chancellor Weber was preparing her army. In Brazil, President Silva was loading his ships. The aliens had made one critical error. They had assumed that humans would react like other species they had conquered. Those species had valued their own survival above all else. But humans were different. Humans would die for children who were not their own. They would cross oceans and fight impossible battles for kids they had never met. The aliens had not conquered a school. They had declared war on the protective instinct of an entire species. In the mothership, Admiral Zikmuth was beginning to understand his mistake. His sensors showed military forces moving from every continent. Nuclear submarines were surfacing. Fighter jets were taking off. Armies were marching. "Perhaps we should return the young humans and leave," suggested Captain Rixfall. "No," Zikmuth said. "We have committed to this action. We cannot show weakness." But deep in his alien mind, the Admiral was starting to feel something his species rarely experienced. He was starting to feel fear. On Earth, the greatest mobilization in human history was beginning, and it was all for 200 children in a small school in Montana. The aliens were about to learn what it meant to threaten a human child. Night fell over Pine Ridge, but nobody was sleeping. The small Montana town had become a military camp. Soldiers, police officers, and volunteers worked under bright lights that had been set up around the school. Colonel Steve Adams had arrived from the nearest military base with 200 Marines. He was a hard man who had fought in 3 wars, but when he saw the school surrounded by alien ships, he felt something he had never experienced before. He felt rage that went deeper than anything he had known. "Sir, we have volunteers coming from all over the country," reported Lieutenant Oriasantis. "We don't have enough beds or food for everyone." "Then we'll sleep on the ground and share what we have," Adams replied. "Nobody goes home until those kids are safe." The volunteers were an unusual army. There were retired soldiers and active police officers, but also teachers, nurses, construction workers, and shop owners. Janet Hayes, the former teacher from Denver, was helping to coordinate supplies. Mike Johnson, the construction worker from New York, was using his tools to build barricades. "I've never seen anything like this," said Sheriff Bill Adams. "People are driving here from California, from Texas, from Florida. They're leaving their jobs and their families to help kids they've never met." In the school basement, Joe Phillips and Dan Cooper were still hiding. They had been watching the aliens all day, learning their patterns. Don had his notebook from Vietnam, and he was writing down everything he saw. "They change guards every 2 hours," he whispered to Joe, "and they have to recharge their weapons every 4 hours. I've seen them plug them into their ships." Joe nodded. "The one with the gold markings is their leader. He's the one giving orders." "We need to get this information to the military," Dan said above them. The alien guards were becoming nervous. They had expected the humans to surrender by now. Instead, more humans kept arriving. The aliens' instruments showed thousands of armed humans surrounding the school. Commander Vextar stood in the cafeteria, looking at the human children. They had been his prisoners for 12 hours, but they were not acting like defeated enemies. Tommy Hayes was helping to distribute the food that the aliens had provided. Lisa Wong was braiding Amy Johnson's hair. Abby Lee was teaching the younger kids a card game. "Your people should have surrendered by now," Vextar told Amy. "They will never surrender," Amy replied. "You took kids from their families. That's the worst thing you can do to a human." The alien commander felt frustrated. On other worlds, taking the young had ended wars immediately. But these humans were different. They seemed to become stronger when their young were threatened. In Washington, D.C., President Carter was in constant contact with world leaders. The cooperation was unprecedented. Russia had offered its space fleet. China had mobilized its army. Even small countries were sending whatever they could. "We have forces from 47 nations heading to Montana," reported General Mitchell. "This is the largest international military operation in history. What about the aliens in orbit?" the president asked. "Admiral Patricia Hayes is leading our space forces. She says we'll be ready to attack their mothership within 6 hours." The president nodded. And the ground assault? Colonel Adams is in charge on the ground. He says they have a plan, but it's dangerous. We might lose a lot of people. President Carter looked at the photos of the children on her desk. General, those kids have been scared for 13 hours. Every minute we wait is another minute of terror for them. We attack at dawn. Around the world, humans were glued to their televisions and computers. The story had united the planet in a way that nothing else ever had. In hospitals, doctors were volunteering to help treat wounded soldiers. In factories, workers were making weapons and supplies for free. In schools, children were praying for their friends in Montana. The aliens in the mothership were intercepting human communications, and what they found terrified them. Human entertainment was filled with violence. Their history books described wars that lasted for years. Their mythology celebrated warriors who died in battle. They are not farmers, Captain Rixville reported to Admiral Zekmoth. They are predators. They have been fighting each other for thousands of years. But they seemed so peaceful in our studies, the Admiral replied. They are peaceful when their young are safe, Rixville said. But when their young are threatened, they become something else. The alien captain showed his commander intercepted human messages. Parents were saying goodbye to their families and heading to Montana. Soldiers were writing letters to their children before the battle. Politicians were promising to use every weapon in their arsenal. They are willing to die for young that are not even their own offspring, Rixville said. This is not normal behavior. But Admiral Zekmoth was too proud to admit his mistake. We have superior technology, he said. They cannot defeat us. On the ground, the human forces were preparing for battle. Colonel Adams was meeting with commanders from around the world. Russian Colonel Dmitry Petrov had brought his best troops. Chinese General Wei Liu had arrived with special forces. British Major Peter Shaw had flown in with his regiment. The plan is simple, Adams explained. We hit them from all sides at once. Air support will attack their ships while ground forces breach the school. The aliens have better weapons, but we have something they don't understand. What's that? Asked General Liu. We have a reason to fight that's stronger than technology, Adams replied. We're fighting for children. The international force was an amazing sight. Soldiers who had been enemies yesterday were now sharing food and ammunition. American pilots were flying with Russian crews. Japanese engineers were working with German mechanics. The threat to human children had made them all part of one army. As the night wore on, more volunteers kept arriving. Helen Foster, the nurse from Chicago, was setting up medical stations. Paul Rogers, the gym teacher who had escaped from the school, was helping to plan the assault. Mary Collins, the third-grade teacher, was giving information about the school's layout. The cafeteria has 4 entrances, Mary explained, but the aliens have blocked 3 of them. The only way in is through the kitchen. What about the windows? Asked Major Shaw. They're too high for the kids to reach, but we could get soldiers through them. Mary replied. The teachers and school staff who had escaped were all helping with the rescue plan. They knew every hallway, every room, every possible hiding place. Their knowledge was more valuable than any weapon. In the school cafeteria, the children were trying to sleep on the floor. The aliens had given them blankets, but the lights were too bright and the floor was too hard. More importantly, they missed their families. I want to go home, whispered 6-year-old Katie Brown. We all do, said Amy Johnson, but we have to be brave. The grown-ups are coming for us. Tommy Hayes was lying next to his best friend Jake Martinez. Do you think we'll ever get out of here? He asked. My dad always said that nobody messes with American kids, Jake replied. He said that's the one thing that will make every adult in the country angry. The alien guards could hear the children whispering, but they didn't understand the words. They didn't know that the children were planning too. Amy Johnson had been watching the guards, just like Dan Cooper in the basement. She had noticed things that might be important. "The tall one with the scar always looks at his weapon when it makes a clicking sound," she whispered to Tommy. "I think that means it's running out of power." "And they don't like loud noises," added Lisa Wong. "When that fire truck went by earlier, they all covered their ears." The children were doing what humans do naturally. They were observing their enemies, looking for weaknesses, and planning to survive. Even at age 8, they had the warrior instinct that the aliens had underestimated Dot as dawn approached. The final preparations were being made. Admiral Hayes was in position with the space fleet. Colonel Adams was ready with the ground forces. President Carter was in the Situation Room, watching everything unfold. "All units, this is command," came the voice over the radio. "In 30 minutes, we begin the largest rescue operation in human history. Remember, we're not just fighting for 200 children in Montana. We're fighting for the principle that human children are sacred. We're fighting to show the universe that some things are worth dying for." Around the world, people were watching their televisions and praying. In Pine Ridge, thousands of soldiers were checking their weapons and saying goodbye to their families over satellite phones. In the school, 200 children were holding hands and hoping. The aliens had made a simple mistake. They had assumed that humans were like other species they had conquered. They thought that threatening children would make humans weak and desperate. Instead, threatening human children had awakened something that had been sleeping since the last World War. It had united every nation on Earth. It had turned ordinary people into warriors and enemies into allies. The aliens were about to learn that humans were not farmers who fought when necessary. They were warriors who farmed when possible. And when someone threatened their young, they became something that the galaxy had never seen before. Dawn was coming, and with it, the fury of an entire species. The attack began at sunrise. Captain Alex Turner led the first wave of fighter jets screaming across the Montana sky. His plane was loaded with experimental weapons that had been developed in secret laboratories. The weapons were designed to fight other humans, but today they would be used against something far more dangerous. "This is Phoenix Lear," Turner said into his radio. "I have visual contact with alien vessels. Beginning attack run." The alien ships were beautiful and terrible. They sat in the school parking lot like silver sculptures, their surfaces reflecting the morning sun. But Turner knew that inside those ships were the creatures that had terrorized 200 children. "For the kids," he whispered, and pressed the trigger. The experimental plasma missiles struck the alien ships with brilliant flashes of light. The ship's shields flickered and sparked, but they held. The aliens had better technology, but the humans had something more powerful. They had raged out in the mothership orbiting Earth. Admiral Zikmuth watched the attack begin. His sensors showed thousands of human aircraft rising from every continent. The sky was filled with fighters, bombers, and transport planes. "They're not just attacking us," reported Captain Rixvow. "They're attacking with everything they have. I count forces from every human nation." "Impossible," Zikmuth said. "These humans fight each other constantly. They cannot work together." But the evidence was clear. American pilots were flying alongside Russian crews. Chinese bombers were escorted by British fighters. Japanese missiles were being loaded into German planes. The threat to human children had done something that no treaty or alliance had ever accomplished. It had made the entire human race into one army. On the ground, Colonel Adams was leading the assault team toward the school. Behind him came soldiers from 47 nations, all wearing the same expression. They were not fighting for their countries today. They were fighting for children. "Remember," Adams said into his radio, "the kids are in the cafeteria. Watch your fire. We cannot risk hitting them." The alien ground forces were ready. Their weapons could cut through steel, and their armor could stop bullets. But they had never faced anything like this before. The humans kept coming even when their friends fell beside them. Lieutenant Maria Santos led her squad through the school's main entrance. The door had been melted open the day before, but now it was blocked by alien barricades. The plasma beams from the alien weapons lit up the hallway like lightning. "They're using the lockers for cover," Santos reported. "But we're pushing through." Behind her, Sergeant Bill Foster fell to an alien weapon. He was a father of 3 from Ohio, and he died trying to reach the children. But his sacrifice was not in vain. His squad used his body as cover to advance further into the school dot in the basement. Dan Cooper and Joe Phillips heard the battle raging above them. They had been hiding for 18 hours, but now they decided to act. "The ventilation system leads to the cafeteria," Joe whispered. "We can get behind the guards." Dan nodded. He was 70 years old and had fought in Vietnam 50 years ago, but he felt like a young soldier again. "Those kids need us." The 2 men crawled through the air vents, carrying tools and a small pistol that Dan had hidden in his locker. They were not soldiers, but they were humans, and human children were in danger dot in the cafeteria. The children could hear the battle getting closer. The alien guards were nervous, clicking to each other in their strange language. Some of them were receiving orders through their communication devices. Amy Johnson was still watching the guards carefully. She had noticed that they were afraid of something. Every time an explosion shook the building, they looked toward the exits. "They want to leave," she whispered to Tommy Hayes. "But they can't because of us." "What do you mean?" Tommy asked. "They're scared." They didn't expect the grown-ups to fight this hard. Commander Vexstar was indeed scared. His species had conquered 12 worlds, but they had never faced resistance like this. The humans were not surrendering. Instead, they were fighting harder than any enemy he had ever seen. "Commander," one of his soldiers reported, "we have lost contact with 3 guard posts. The humans are advancing through the school." "Hold your positions," Vexstar ordered. "We still have the young ones. The humans will not risk harming them." But the commander was wrong. The humans were not stopping. They were fighting with a precision and fury that seemed impossible. They were willing to die to save children they had never met. In the hallway outside the cafeteria, Colonel Adams and his international force were fighting room by room. The aliens had better weapons, but the humans had better tactics. They had been fighting wars for thousands of years, and they knew how to use every advantage. "Smoke grenades," Adams ordered. "Block their vision." The hallway filled with thick smoke. The aliens' compound eyes, which were perfect for spotting movement in open spaces, became useless in the fog. The humans moved through the smoke like ghosts, striking where the aliens couldn't see them. Russian Colonel Dmitry Petrov was fighting beside Chinese General Wei Liu. 2 hours ago, their countries had been rivals. Now they were brothers in arms. "Cover me," Petrov said, and charged an alien position. The alien soldier fired his plasma weapon, but Petrov rolled under the beam and tackled the 7-foot creature. The alien was stronger, but Petrov was desperate. He was fighting for every child who had ever been scared dot in the sky above. The air battle was reaching its climax. Captain Turner's squadron had been joined by pilots from around the world. They were flying in formation, something that had never been done before. "This is Dragon Leader," came a voice with a British accent. "I'm Major Peter Shaw, Royal Air Force. We're coming in from the east." "This is Bear Leader," said a Russian pilot. "We have you covered from the north." The alien ships were taking damage. Their shields were failing under the constant assault. But more importantly, the aliens inside were losing their nerve. They had expected an easy victory, but they were facing the combined might of human civilization. Inside the school, the battle was reaching the cafeteria. The alien guards could hear human voices getting closer. They were professional soldiers, but they were afraid. These humans fought like demons when their young were threatened. Suddenly, Dan Cooper dropped from the ceiling vent behind the alien guards. He was an old man with a small pistol, but he moved like a warrior. Joe Phillips followed him, carrying a heavy wrench. "Hey, Bug Eyes," Dan shouted. "Pick on someone your own size." The aliens spun around, confused. Their tactics were designed for fighting armies, not for old men appearing from nowhere. In that moment of confusion, the cafeteria doors exploded inward. Colonel Adams and his assault team poured into the room. Behind them came soldiers from every nation on Earth. British, Russian, Chinese, German, Japanese, and dozens of other flags were represented in the force that burst through the doors. "Get down, kids." Adams shouted out. The children dropped to the floor as the final battle began. The alien guards were caught between the assault team and the two old men who had appeared behind them. They fought bravely, but they were outnumbered and outfought. Commander Vextar raised his weapon toward the children, but Tommy Hayes threw himself in front of his classmates. The 8-year-old boy spread his arms wide, just like his teacher Mary Collins had done the day before. "You won't hurt my friends," Tommy said, his voice shaking but determined. The alien commander hesitated. This small human was willing to die for others, just like the adults. What kind of species raised their young to be so brave? That moment of hesitation cost him everything. Lieutenant Santos put 3 bullets in his chest, and the alien commander fell to the floor. His weapons scattered across the cafeteria tiles. "All children, move to the far wall," Adams ordered. "Stay low and stay together." The children obeyed quickly. They had been scared for 18 hours, but now they could see their rescuers. These were not just soldiers. These were parents, teachers, and ordinary people who had come to save them. Amy Johnson looked at the international force and smiled. She had been right. The grown-ups had come for them, and they had brought everyone. The last alien guard fell under a combined assault from 4 different nations. Russian bullets, American. Grenades, Chinese combat knives, and British courage had ended the battle in the cafeteria. "Cafeteria secured," Adams reported into his radio. "All children are safe. I repeat, all children are safe." Around the world, people cheered. In hospitals, doctors and nurses hugged each other. In offices, workers stopped what they were doing and applauded. In other schools, children celebrated for their friends in Montana. But the battle was not over. The alien ships outside were still functional, and the mothership was still in orbit. The aliens had lost the school, but they still had superior technology. "All ground forces, fall back," came the order from command. "Airstrike incoming." The soldiers grabbed the children and ran for the exits. They had to get the kids away from the alien ships before the final assault began. Outside, the alien pilots were trying to escape. Their ground mission had failed completely, and now they faced the fury of the entire human air force. The sky was dark with aircraft from every nation on Earth. "This is Phoenix Leader," Captain Turner said into his radio. "All alien ground vessels are preparing to lift off. We cannot let them escape. All units weapons free," came the reply from. 3 days after the battle, Pine Ridge was still full of people from around the world. The small Montana town had become a symbol of something greater than anyone had expected. Reporters, soldiers, and ordinary families walked through the streets, all wanting to see the place where humanity had shown its true strength. Amy Johnson sat on her front porch with her grandmother, watching the people pass by. The 8-year-old girl had become famous around the world, but she didn't understand why. To her, the grown-ups had simply done what grown-ups were supposed to do. "Grandma, why are all these people here?" she asked. "Because you children taught the world something important," her grandmother replied. "You showed everyone that being human means protecting each other." In the rebuilt school cafeteria, Workers were cleaning up the last signs of the battle. The walls had been repaired and painted. New tables and chairs had been donated by families from every state. But the most important thing was hanging on the wall, a memorial to the 12 soldiers who had died saving the children. Mary Collins stood in her empty classroom, preparing for the children to return next week. The desks had been replaced, and the windows had been fixed. But she knew that something had changed forever. Her students had seen what adults would do to protect them, and that knowledge would stay with them for the rest of their lives. Principal Richard Stone walked into the classroom. He looked older than he had a week ago, but his eyes were bright with pride. "The children want to come back," he told Mary. "All of them. Their parents asked if they wanted to transfer to other schools, but they said no, they want to stay here." Mary smiled. "Of course they do. This is their school. This is where they learn what it means to be human." Across town, Tommy Hayes was playing in his backyard with his friends. Lisa Wong and Jake Martinez had come over for lunch, just like they did before the attack. But their games were different. Now, instead of playing soldiers, they played rescuers. Instead of fighting enemies, they saved people. "When I grow up, I want to be like Colonel Adams," Tommy said. "I want to protect kids who are scared." "I want to be like Lieutenant Santos," Lisa replied. She was so brave. Their parents watched from the kitchen window, amazed by how strong their children had become. The attack had been terrible, but it had shown them something wonderful about their kids. Even at 8 years old, they understood what was truly important. In Washington, D.C., President Carter was meeting with world leaders in a way that had never happened before. The crisis had created new friendships between old enemies. Russians were working with Americans. Chinese were cooperating with Japanese. Germans were sharing technology with French. "We need to make sure this unity continues," said Prime Minister David Cameron of Britain. "The children showed us who we really are when we work together." "Agreed," said President Chun of China. "We cannot let old arguments divide us when we have seen what we can accomplish united." The alien mothership had been captured intact, along with Admiral Zikmoth and his surviving crew. Human scientists were studying their technology, but more importantly, diplomats were learning about the galaxy beyond Earth. "There are 47 intelligent species in this region of space," Admiral Zikmoth explained during his interrogation. "Most of them are like us. They value strength and conquest above all else." "And what do they think of humans now?" asked General Mitchell. The alien admiral was quiet for a long moment. "They are afraid," he finally said. "Word has spread about what happened here. Every species in the galaxy now knows that humans will fight to the death for their young, even young that are not their own." "Good," President Carter said. "Let them be afraid. Maybe they'll think twice before threatening anyone's children." But the president knew that the real victory was not about fear. It was about what humanity had discovered about itself. For the first time in history, every nation on Earth had fought for the same cause. They had proven that humans could work together when something truly important was at stake. In Pine Ridge, the memorial service for the fallen soldiers was held in the Oz School Gymnasium. Families from 6 different countries had come to honor their dead. Russian Colonel Dmitry Petrov's widow stood next to American Sergeant Bill Foster's children. Chinese Lieutenant Wei Ming's parents hugged British Captain James Wilson's mother. Colonel Adams gave the main speech. He stood before the crowd of hundreds, looking at the flags of 6 nations that hung behind him. "These 12 men and women died for children they had never met," he said. "They came from different countries, spoke different languages, and served different flags. But when human children were in danger, they became brothers and sisters in arms." The crowd was silent as Adams continued. "They died to teach the universe a simple lesson. Human children are sacred. all human children, everywhere. And anyone who threatens them will face all of humanity united. After the service, the families of the fallen soldiers met with the children they had died to save. It was a moment that brought tears to everyone's eyes. Amy Johnson hugged Mrs. Foster, the widow of Sergeant Bill Foster. "Your husband saved us," Amy told her. "He was very brave." "He would be proud to know that," Mrs. Foster replied. "He always said that protecting children was the most important job in the world." The international cooperation that had begun during the crisis continued to grow. The United Earth Defense Force was established, with headquarters in Pine Ridge, Montana. The small town that had once been unknown to the world became the center of humanity's expansion into space. Admiral Patricia Hayes was chosen to lead the new force. Her first mission was to explore the galaxy and make contact with other species. But this time, humans would not be seen as weak farmers. They would be known as the species that protected their young with the fury of an entire civilization. "We're not going out there to conquer," Admiral Hayes explained to her international crew. "We're going to explore, to learn, and to protect. But if anyone threatens human children, anywhere in the galaxy, they'll learn what happened to the Zephyrians." The alien technology that had been captured was shared freely between all nations. Within a year, human ships were traveling to other star systems. Within 5 years, human colonies were established on a dozen worlds. But the most important thing they carried with them was not technology. It was the lesson learned in a small school in Montana. Human children were precious, and humanity would defend them with everything they had. 10 years after the attack, Amy Johnson was 18 years old and graduating from high school. She had been accepted to the Space Academy, where she would train to become a pilot in the United Earth Defense Force. "Why do you want to go into space?" a reporter asked her during graduation. "Because there might be other children out there who need help," Amy replied, "and humans protect children. That's what we do." The school where she had been held captive was now a museum and training center. Soldiers from around the world came to study the battle and learn about human unity. But the most important visitors were the children, who came on field trips. They learned about the day when the world stopped fighting itself and fought for something bigger. They learned about the soldiers who died for kids they had never met. They learned about the teachers who stood between aliens and their students. Most importantly, they learned what it meant to be human. Mary Collins, now retired, often gave tours to the visiting children. She would stand in the rebuilt cafeteria and tell them about the day everything changed. "The aliens thought they were smart," she would say. "They thought humans were weak because we cared about our children. But they were wrong. We're not weak because we love our children. We're strong because we love our children." The children would nod and understand. They had grown up in a world where every nation worked together, where former enemies were now friends, where humanity had learned to see itself as one family. The last alien who attacked a human school had died in that cafeteria 10 years ago. But his death had given humanity something precious, the knowledge that they were capable of amazing things when they worked together. In the end, the aliens had not conquered Earth. They had not enslaved humanity. Instead, they had accidentally created something that the galaxy had never seen before. A united human species that would spread across the stars, carrying with them the simple but powerful idea that children are sacred, and anyone who threatens them faces not just one nation, but all of humanity. The children of Pine Ridge had taught the universe what it meant to be human, and the universe would never forget.